Exodus chapter 16. The Israelites left Elim, and the entire community reached the desert of Sin between Elim and Sinai on the 15th day of the second month after leaving Egypt. In the desert, the whole community of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron and said to them, "If only we had died by the hand of Yahweh in Egypt, when we sat down to cauldrons of meat and ate all the bread we wanted, whereas you have brought us to this desert to let the whole assembly die of starvation." Yahweh then said to Moses, "Now I am going to rain down bread from heaven for you. Each day the people are to gather what is needed for that day. In this way I will test them to see if they will follow my teaching or not. On the 6th day, when they prepare what they have brought in, they will find that there is twice as much as they gather each day." Then Moses and Aaron said to the people of Israel, "In the evening you will know that it was Yahweh who brought you out of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the glory of Yahweh. For he has heard your grumbling against him, because who are we that you should grumble against us? In the evening Yahweh will give you meat to eat, and in the morning bread to satisfy your hunger, because Yahweh heard your grumbling. You are not grumbling against us, but against Yahweh, for who are we?" Then Moses directed Aaron to say to the whole community of Israel, "Draw near to Yahweh, for he has heard your complaints." It happened that as Aaron was speaking to the full assembly of Israel, they turned towards the desert and saw the glory of Yahweh in the midst of the cloud. Then Yahweh spoke to Moses, "I have heard the complaints of Israel. Speak to them and say, 'Between the 2 evenings you will eat meat, and in the morning you will have bread to your heart's content. Then you shall know that I am Yahweh your God.'" In the evening, quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning, dew had fallen around the camp. When the dew lifted, there was on the surface of the desert a thin crust like hoarfrost. The people of Israel, upon seeing it, said to one another, "What is it?" For they didn't know what it was. Moses told them, "It is the bread that Yahweh has given you to eat. This is what Yahweh commanded. Gather it according to the amount each one eats, about 4 liters apiece, and according to the number of persons each of you has in his tent." This is what the people of Israel did. They gathered it, some more, others less. But when they measured it with an omer, those who gathered more didn't have too much, while those who gathered less didn't have too little. Each one had as much as he needed. And Moses said to them, "Let no one leave any of it till the morning." But they did not listen to Moses, and some of them left it till morning. It bred worms and became foul, and Moses was angry with them. Every morning each one gathered as much as he could eat, and when the sun grew hot, it melted. On the 6th day, they gathered the double amount of bread, 2 omers each, and the leader of the people came to tell Moses. He said to them, This is what Yahweh commanded. Tomorrow you shall rest, for that day is a rest, or Sabbath, sacred to Yahweh. Bake today what you have to bake, and boil what you have to boil, and you shall put aside what is left over to be kept till the next day. So they put it aside until morning, as Moses had ordered, and its smell was not foul, and it was free of maggots. And Moses said, Eat it today, for this is a day of rest, or Sabbath, in honor of Yahweh. Today you will not find it in the fields. For 6 days you will gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will be none. Some of the people went out on the 7th day, but found none. Then Yahweh said to Moses, How long will you refuse to obey my commands and my laws? Yahweh has given you this resting day. That is why on the 6th day he gave you bread for 2 days. Each of you stay where you are. Do not leave your place on the 7th day. And so the people rested on the 7th day. The people of Israel called this food manna. It was white like coriander seed, and it tasted like wafers made with honey. And Moses said, This is what Yahweh commanded. Take a measure of manna and keep it for future generations, to let them see the bread I gave you to eat in the desert when I brought you out of Egypt. Then Moses said to Aaron, Take a jar and fill it with a measure of manna, and place it before Yahweh for your descendants. Accordingly, Aaron put a full measure of manna in the jar, as Yahweh had commanded Moses, and placed it for safekeeping in the Ark of the Covenant. The people of Israel ate the manna until they came to an inhabited land. They ate it for 40 years, up to the time they reached the border of Canaan. The container used for the measurement of manna was of 2 liters. Exodus chapter 17. The whole community of the people of Israel moved on from the desert of Sin, going from place to place as Yahweh commanded, and encamped at Rephidim, but there was no water to drink. The people complained to Moses and said, Give us water to drink. But Moses replied, Why do you find fault with me? Why do you put Yahweh to the test? But the people thirsted for water there and grumbled against Moses. Why did you make us leave Egypt to have us die of thirst with our children and our cattle? So Moses cried to Yahweh, What shall I do with the people? They are almost ready to stone me. Yahweh said to Moses, Go ahead of the people and take with you the elders of Israel. Take with you the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there before you on the rock at Horeb. You will strike the rock, and water will flow from it, and the people will drink. Moses did this in the presence of the elders of Israel. The place was called Massah and Meribah because of the complaints of the Israelites, who tested Yahweh, saying, Is Yahweh with us or not? When the Israelites were at Rephidim, the Amalekites came and attacked them. So Moses said to Joshua, Choose some of our men and go out to fight the Amalekites in the morning. As for me, I will stand with God's staff in my hand at the top of the hill. Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had directed, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. It happened that when Moses raised his hands, the Israelites would win, but when he lowered them, the Amalekites would have the advantage. As Moses' arms grew weary, they placed a stone for him to sit on, while Aaron and Hur on either side held up his arms, which remained steadily raised until sunset. For his part, Joshua mowed down Amalek and his people with the sword. Yahweh then instructed Moses, "Write this in a book as something to be remembered, and make it known in the hearing of Joshua that I will wipe out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven." After that, Moses built an altar and called it, "Yahweh is my banner," for he said, "Raise up the standard of Yahweh. Yahweh is at war with the Amalekites from generation to generation." Exodus chapter 8. Jethro, the priest of Midian, father-in-law of Moses, heard all that God had done for Moses and for Israel his people when Yahweh brought Israel out of Egypt. After Moses had sent away Zipporah his wife, Jethro his father-in-law received her and her 2 sons. The first Moses had called Gershom to remember that he had been a guest in a foreign land, and the other Eliezer, for he said, "The God of my father came to my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh." So Jethro came with Moses' wife and sons to the desert where the people had encamped at the mountain of God. Moses was told, "Your father-in-law Jethro is here. He has come with your wife and her 2 sons." So Moses went out to meet his father-in-law, and bowing low before him, he kissed him. And when each had inquired about the other's health, they entered the tent. Moses then told his father-in-law all that Yahweh had done to Pharaoh and Egypt for the sake of Israel, and all the difficulties they had met with on the way, and how Yahweh had saved them. Jethro rejoiced at all Yahweh's goodness to Israel in freeing them from the power of Egypt, and he said, "Blessed be Yahweh, who has delivered you from the power of Egypt and Pharaoh, and has rescued the people from the grip of Egypt. I know now that Yahweh is greater than all the gods, for he delivered his people when they were being oppressed." Then Jethro brought a burnt offering and other sacrifices to offer to God. And Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to share this meal with Moses' father-in-law in the presence of God. The next day, Moses took his seat to administer justice for the people who stood around him from morning till night. His father-in-law, seeing all the work of Moses for the people, said to him, "What is this you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit and judge, while all the people stand around you from morning till night?" Moses answered, "It is the people who come to me to know God's will. When there is a dispute, they bring it to me to decide between the 2 parties, and I teach them God's decrees and laws." Jethro replied, What you are doing is not good. You and your people will wear yourselves out, for the work is too heavy and you cannot do it alone. Now listen to the advice I am going to give you, and God be with you. You will be the people's representative before God and bring their cases to Him. You will teach them the statutes and laws and the way they must live and what they must do. But choose among the people capable, God-fearing men, men of truth who hate a bribe, and appoint them as leaders for groups of 1,000, 100, 50, and 10. They will administer justice at all times, bringing to your attention only those cases of major importance, while they deal with all those of lesser importance. That will ease your burden, since they will be sharing it with you. If you do this, God will guide you, and you will be able to cope with this duty. And all these people will reach their place in peace. Moses followed his father-in-law's advice and did as he said. He chose capable men from among the Israelites and placed them as leaders for groups of 1,000, 100, 50, and 10. They administered justice at all times, bringing difficult cases to Moses, but judging all other cases themselves. Then Moses let his father-in-law return to his own country. Exodus chapter 9. Exactly 2 months after the Israelites had left Egypt, they arrived at the wilderness of Sinai. They arrived there coming from Rephidim and camped in the wilderness of Sinai. The Israelites camped there in front of the mountain. But Moses went up to God, and Yahweh called to him from the mountain, saying, "This is what you are to say, and to explain to the Israelites. You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you listen to me and keep my covenant, you shall be my very own possession among all the nations. For all the earth is mine, but you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." And he added, "This is what you are to say to the people of Israel." So Moses went and summoned all the elders of the people and related to them all that Yahweh had commanded him to say. All the people responded with one voice, "All that Yahweh has said, we will do." Moses then brought back to Yahweh the people's response. Yahweh spoke to Moses, "I am going to come to you in a dense cloud, so that the people may hear me speaking with you and trust you always." Then Moses related to Yahweh what the people had said. Again Yahweh spoke to Moses, "Go to the people and have them sanctified today and tomorrow. Let them wash their garments and be ready for the 3rd day. For on the 3rd day, Yahweh will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. You will fix a limit for the people all around, saying, 'Take care not to go up to the mountain or touch its base. Whoever touches the mountain will die. No hand shall touch him, but he will be stoned or shot down by arrows. Be it man or beast, he shall not live. Only when the ram's horn sounds, may some of them go up to the mountain.' Moses came down from the mountain to the people and purified them, and they washed their garments. He then said to the people, "Be ready in 3 days and abstain from sexual relations." On the morning of the 3rd day, there was thunder and lightning, and a dense cloud over the mountain, and a very loud trumpet blast was heard. All the people in the camp trembled. Moses then made the people leave the camp to meet God and stand at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was completely covered in smoke because Yahweh had come down in fire, and the smoke rose as from a furnace. The whole mountain shook violently, while the blast of the trumpet became louder and louder. Moses spoke, and God replied in thunder. When Yahweh had come down to the summit of Mount Sinai, God called Moses, who went to the summit, where Yahweh said to him, "Go down and give this warning to the people, lest they rush to see Yahweh and many of them perish. Even the priests who come near Yahweh must purify themselves, lest Yahweh break out against them." Moses answered Yahweh, "The people cannot ascend Mount Sinai, because you yourself ordered us to put limits around the mountain and set it apart as holy." Yahweh replied, "Go down and bring up Aaron with you, but do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to Yahweh, or he will break out against them." So Moses went down to the people and said to them. Exodus chapter 20. God spoke all these words. He said, "I am Yahweh your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. Do not have other gods before me. Do not make yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything in heaven, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. For I, Yahweh your God, am a jealous God. For the sin of the fathers, when they rebel against me, I punish the sons, the grandsons, and the great-grandsons. But I show steadfast love until the 1000th generation for those who love me and keep my commandments. Do not take the name of Yahweh your God in vain, for Yahweh will not leave unpunished anyone who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. For 6 days you will labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath for Yahweh your God. Do not work that day, neither you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your servants, men or women, nor your animals, nor the stranger who is staying with you. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, and the sea, and all that is in them. But on the 7th day he rested. That is why Yahweh has blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother, that you may have a long life in the land that Yahweh has given you. Do not kill. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not give false witness against your neighbor. Do not covet your neighbor's house. Do not covet your neighbor's wife, or his servant, man or woman, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is his. In the meantime, all the people witnessed the thunder and lightning, and heard the blast of the trumpet, and saw the mountain smoking, they trembled with fear and kept at a distance. Then they said to Moses, "You yourself speak to us, and we shall listen. But do not have God speak to us, lest we die." Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid, for God has come to test you, so that the fear of God may be with you, and that you may not sin again." So the people kept at a distance, while Moses went forward to the cloud where God was. Yahweh spoke to Moses, "Say this to the people of Israel: You have seen for yourselves that I have spoken to you from the heavens. Do not make any gods of silver or gold to stand beside me. For me, you ought to make an altar of earth, and on it you will sacrifice burnt offerings and peace offerings, your sheep and your cattle. In every place where you come to remember my name, I will come to you and bless you. If you build an altar of stone, do not make it of cut stones, for you will defile it by using tools on it. And you will not ascend my altar on steps, lest you expose your nakedness on it." Exodus chapter 21. These are the laws you ought to set before them. When you buy a Hebrew slave, he will serve you for 6 years, and in the 7th year he shall go free, with nothing to pay. If he came alone, he will leave alone. If he was married, his wife will live with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children belong to his master. He will leave alone. But if the slave says, "I love my wife, my master and my children, I will not go free," his master shall bring him to God. He will take him to the door or the doorpost. Then his master will pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him for life. When a man sells his daughter as a slave, she is not to go free as men slaves do. If she does not please the master who intended her for himself, he shall let another redeem her. He is not to sell her to foreigners, because he has broken faith with her. If he intends her for his son, he will deal with her according to the rights of daughters. If he takes another for himself, he will not diminish food, her clothing, or her marital rights. If he fails her in respect of these 3 rights, she is to go free without any payment of money. The man who strikes another and so causes his death shall die. If he did not want to kill him, but as it were, let it happen, then I will give you a place where he may find refuge. Instead, if a man willfully attacks another to kill him treacherously, you will take him away even from my altar and put him to death. Whoever strikes his father or mother shall be put to death. Anyone who kidnaps another and either sells him or is found holding him captive shall be put to death. He who curses his father or mother shall be put to death. When men quarrel and one strikes another with a stone or with his fist, so that the man is confined to bed, but after that he gets up and walks about with the help of a stick, the man who struck the blow will not be held as a criminal. He will, however, pay the injured man for loss of time and see that he is completely healed. When a man strikes his slave or his servant with a rod, and the man dies at his hands, he shall be punished. But if the slave survives for a day or two, he will not be penalized, since the slave is his property. If men are fighting and a pregnant woman is hit, so that the child is born prematurely, but she is not injured, the one who hurt her will pay the fine demanded by her husband and allowed by the court. But if there is serious injury, you are to take life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. When a man strikes the eye of his slave, male or female, and the eye is lost, he will let the slave go free in compensation for the eye. Or, if he knocks out a tooth, he will likewise give the slave his freedom. When an ox gores a man or woman to death, the ox will be stoned, and its flesh will not be eaten, but the owner of the ox will not be punished. If the ox had gored someone in the past, and its owner had been warned, but had not kept it fenced in, and if later it kills a man or woman, the ox will be stoned, and its owner put to death. If the owner, however, is allowed to pay a fine to save his life, he must pay all that is demanded. If the ox gores a boy or a girl, the same law applies. If the ox gores a man or woman's slave, the owner of the slave shall be paid 30 pieces of silver, and the ox will be stoned. When a man leaves a pit uncovered, or when he digs a pit and leaves it open, and an ox or a donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit will make compensation to the owner of the animal by paying him money, but he may keep the dead animal. When a man's ox injures the ox of his neighbor and it dies, they will sell the live ox and share both the money and the meat of the dead animal. Or, if it is known that the ox had been in the habit of goring, and its owner has not kept it in, he must make good the loss by giving his neighbor a live ox, but the dead ox will be his. If a man steals an ox or a sheep, and either slaughters or sells it, he must pay 5 oxen for the ox, 4 sheep for the sheep. Exodus chapter 22. If a thief is caught breaking into a house and receives a mortal blow, the man who struck him will not be guilty of his death. But if it happened after dawn, he will be guilty of murder. The thief must make full restitution. Cannot do this, he must be sold for what he has stolen. If what has been stolen is found alive in his possession, be it ox, donkey, or sheep, he must pay double. If a man puts his animals to graze and lets them stray and feed in another man's field or vineyard, he must make good the loss with the best of his own crop and the best of his vineyard. When a fire breaks out and spreads through the thorn bushes and burns the grain that is either stacked or growing there, the one who started the fire must pay for the damage. If a man gives money or goods to another to keep for him, and they are stolen, the thief, if he is found, shall pay back double. Should the thief not be found, the man who owns the house must swear before the judges that he has not stolen the other man's property. Whenever there is a failure of trust, whether it concerns an ox, donkey, sheep, clothing, or any other lost object, the case shall come before the judges. The person the judges find guilty shall pay double to the other. If a man entrusts to his neighbor his donkey, cow, sheep, or other animal, and the animal dies or is injured, or is carried off without being seen, an oath before Yahweh shall prove that the man has not stolen the other's property. The owner of the animal shall accept the oath, and the other shall not make restitution. But if the animal has been stolen from him, restitution shall be made. If the animal was killed by wild beasts, the man must bring the remains as evidence, but shall not pay anything. When a man borrows an animal from his neighbor, and the animal is injured or dies when the owner is not present, the man who borrowed must pay for it. But if the owner is present, the borrower need not repay. If a man seduces a virgin who is not betrothed and lies with her, he shall pay the bride price and marry her. If her father refuses to give her to him, he shall pay money equal to that for a virgin given in marriage. You shall not allow a sorceress to live. Whoever has sexual relations with a beast shall die. Whoever sacrifices to any god other than Yahweh shall die. You shall not wrong or oppress a stranger, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt. You shall not harm the widow or the orphan. If you do harm them, and they cry out to me, I will hear them, and my anger will blaze, and I will kill you with the sword, and your own wives will be widows, and your own children orphans. If you lend money to any of my people who are poor, do not act like a money lender, and do not charge him interest. If ever you take a person's cloak as a pledge, you must give it back to him by sunset, for it is all the covering he has for his body. In what else will he sleep? And when he cries to me, I will hear him, for I am full of pity. Do not revile God or curse a ruler of your people. Do not delay in giving me my share of your wheat and your wine. You shall give to me the firstborn of your sons. It shall be the same for your cattle and sheep. The firstborn shall stay with its mother for 7 days. On the 8th day you shall give it to me. You shall be consecrated to my service. Do not eat flesh that has been torn by wild animals. Let it be given to the dogs. Exodus chapter 23. Do not make false statements, and do not join hands with the wicked by being a malicious witness. Do not follow the majority when they do evil, or when they pervert justice in a lawsuit. Do not be partial, not even to the poor. If you see your enemy's ox or donkey going astray, take it back to him. When you see the donkey of a man who hates you falling under its load, do not pass by, but help him. Do not deny justice to any of your poor in a lawsuit. Keep away from lies. Do not slay the innocent or the just, for I will not forgive the wicked. And do not take a bribe. For a bribe blinds the eyes of the clear-sighted and perverts the sentence of the just. Do not oppress a stranger. You know what it is to be a stranger, for that is what you were in the land of Egypt. For 6 years you will sow your fields and reap their produce, but in the 7th you will let the land rest and lie fallow. The poor may eat what it produces, and what they leave the wild animals will eat. It will be the same for your vineyards and your olive grove. For 6 days you shall work, but on the 7th you shall rest, so that your ox and your donkey may also rest, and the son of your slave girl and the stranger as well may have a breathing space. Pay attention to all that I tell you, and do not call upon other gods. Don't let their names be heard on your lips. 3 times each year you shall celebrate a feast in my honor. You shall keep the feast of unleavened bread, as I commanded you, and eat unleavened bread for 7 days at the appointed time in the month of Abib, for it was then that you left Egypt. And do not come to me empty-handed. You shall keep the feast of the harvest with the feast of the first harvest of what you sowed in your fields. Then the feast of ingathering at the end of the year, when you gather in the fruit of your labor in the fields. 3 times during the year all your men shall present themselves before Yahweh. Do not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leavened bread, or let the fat of my feast remain until morning. The first of the fruits of your soil you will bring to the house of Yahweh your God. Do not boil a kid in its mother's milk. See, I am sending an angel before you to keep you safe on the way and bring you to the place I have made ready. Be on your guard in his presence and listen to him. Do not resist him, for he will not pardon your wrongdoing, for my name is in him. If you listen to him and do what I say, I will be enemy to your enemies and the opponent of your opponents. My angel will go before you and bring you to the land of the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. All these I will destroy. You shall not bow down before their gods or serve them, or act according to their ways. Rather, you will destroy them utterly and smash their sacred stones. If you serve Yahweh your God, He will bless your bread and your water, and I will keep sickness away from you. No woman among you will miscarry or be barren. I will fulfill the number of your days. Now I will send my terror ahead of you and throw into confusion all the people you encounter. I will make all your enemies turn and flee before you. I will send hornets ahead of you to drive out the Hivites, the Canaanites, and the Hittites. I will not drive them out in a single year, lest the land become a desert and the wild beasts increase and molest you. I will drive them out before you little by little, until your number increase and you are able to take possession of the land. I will fix your boundaries from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness to the Euphrates. For I will deliver into your power the inhabitants of the land, and I will drive them out before you. You shall make no treaty with them or with their gods. They shall not live in your country, lest they lead you to sin against me and to serve their gods. That would surely be a snare for you. Exodus chapter 24. Then he said to Moses, Go up to Yahweh, you, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, with 70 of the elders of Israel, and let them worship from a distance. Moses alone shall go forward to Yahweh, but not the others, nor shall the people go up with him. Moses came and told the people all the words of Yahweh and all his laws. The people replied with one voice, Everything that Yahweh has said, we shall do. Moses wrote down all the words of Yahweh, then rose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain with 12 raised stones for the 12 tribes of Israel. He then sent young men from among the sons of Israel to offer burnt offerings and sacrifice bullocks as peace offerings to Yahweh. And Moses took off the blood and put it in basins, and with the other half of the blood he sprinkled the altar. He then took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people. They said, All that Yahweh said, we shall do and obey. Moses then took the blood and sprinkled it on the people, saying, Here is the blood of the covenant that Yahweh has made with you in accordance with all these words. Then Moses went up with Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel. They saw the God of Israel. Under his feet there was what seemed like a pavement of sapphire, clear as the sky itself. And he did not let his hand overpower these chosen men from among the sons of Israel. They looked on God and ate and drank. Yahweh said to Moses, Come up to me on the mountain and stay there. I will give you the slabs of stone, the teaching and commandment which I have written for their instruction. So Moses arose with his servant Joshua, and before going up the mountain of God, Moses said to the elders, Remain here until we come back to you. Aaron and Hur are with you. Let whoever has a dispute to settle go to them. When Moses went up the mountain, a cloud covered it. The glory of Yahweh rested on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. On the 7th day, he called to Moses from within the cloud. The glory of Yahweh appeared like a consuming fire on the top of the mountain. So it was as it appeared to the Israelites. And Moses entered the cloud and went up the mountain. Moses stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights.